Hey everybody, Doug Klutz here, and today I want to talk about a topic that I'm asked about a lot, and that has to do with law school, and specifically whether or not someone should plan to apply to law school, and then what are some specific tips in preparing to apply to law school. So when I'm talking about this topic to students and kind of the initiation phases of thinking about law school, I always try to start out and stress to students that law school is a tremendous commitment in terms of money and in terms of the time that you're going to invest preparing for law school and then attending law school. It's a big financial commitment. These days you're talking about potentially well over $100,000 when it's all said and done. And you need to think about this type of investment like you would in buying your first house. And a lot of times the cost can be comparable in terms of attending law school, the cost of it when it's all said and done, and purchasing that first home. If you're purchasing a home, you're going to have it inspected, you're going to do a lot of research, you're going to do your due diligence and put in that time. You need to approach making an investment in a law school program the same way. You need to do a lot of research, you need to be fully committed in that investment before you make it. Unfortunately, I see a lot of students, especially as they're finishing their undergraduate degree, they feel like their options are limited, and so they'll say, well, I'm just going to attend law school. I'm not fully committed to potentially even seeing law school through, or I don't even know if I want to really work in the legal market, but I'm just going to go to law school to go to law school. And, in my opinion, there are a lot better ways that you can spend your time and money than if you're not fully committed to that type of investment. And that tends to breed a lot of frustration when it's all said and done because the student ends up spending a lot of money and seeing little to no results because they weren't fully committed in the first place. So you have to understand that the legal market today is extremely competitive. The gainful employment opportunities can be scarce, and a lot of that has to do with what type of geographical area you're ultimately applying to. There are a lot of articles that have been written on the scarcity of jobs in that field. But with that said, if you are fully committed to working in the legal field and utilizing your law degree and your JD degree, and that is what you want to do, you're ultimately going to have to go to law school to be able to attain those career aspirations. But you want to, again, make sure you're fully committed to that track. If you don't know if you want to work in the legal field and law school just sounds like a cool idea, you can take some time off before you enter a law school program and you start seriously applying and preparing and complete a legal internship. That's one of the best recommendations I have, regardless of what field you're going into, to vet that field before you actually start working full-time in that field. Complete an internship or a volunteer type opportunity and make sure you like it. And in fact, I tell my undergraduate students that really what I recommend is completing at least 2 legal internships throughout your undergraduate career, at least 2, to make sure you really like working in the legal field. And if you like it and you're still set on law school, you can make that decision to ultimately apply and attend a law school and see that through. If you don't like it, if you complete an internship and you say, I don't think this is for me, then law school probably isn't your best bet. Or maybe complete another legal internship or volunteer opportunity just to see, to make sure. But again, before you make that tremendous commitment, that could lead to frustrating results if you don't see it all the way through and you find out it's not for you. So some of the specific tips I have in terms of preparing to apply to law school, the biggest one is to prepare in advance for the LSAT, the law school admissions test. That is the standardized test you need to get into law school. I know with that said, over the last year or so, it's been a recent development that some law schools are accepting the GRE, the graduate record examination. There's been a lot of press about this. There have been a lot of articles written about it. My opinion, and from what I've seen in the different articles written about this topic, you're safer with taking the LSAT, preparing for the LSAT, taking the LSAT. It has a broader application still to the majority of law schools, but I would recommend reading up on that specific subject. But by all accounts, from what I've seen, for right now at least, stick with preparing for the LSAT, planning on taking the LSAT. It will have the broadest application as you are preparing to apply to these different law schools. But one of the biggest limiting factors I see with students in preparing to apply to their law schools of choice is lack of preparation on the LSAT. And I always recommend to prepare as early as possible. Don't wait till 3 months before. Don't try to cram it all in at the very end. Prepare along the way. So if you're a freshman or you're a sophomore and you're thinking that, maybe I want to attend law school and you're starting to become more sure of that decision, then start preparing now. And maybe you only do 2 or 3 practice problems a day, and then after a month or so you build that into taking a practice LSAT test, but you need to do a little bit along the way. And as you get closer to actually scheduling your LSAT, make sure that you're basically treating it like a full-time job in preparing to take the standardized test. It carries a lot of weight and potentially could come, if you get a really top LSAT score, not only can you get into your top programs of choice, maybe you get an additional financial compensation package because of your high LSAT score. And unfortunately, what I see with a lot of students, they under-prepare for the LSAT. For one reason or another, they don't take it seriously enough, and they get a lower score than they're capable of getting. And that's kind of a snowball effect, because then they start applying to maybe lesser programs, lesser quality programs, and they don't see the results that they want to see, and it leads to frustrating results on the other side as they begin to prepare for jobs. So first and foremost, prepare for that LSAT today, and even if you're a freshman or sophomore, start doing 2 or 3 practice problems a day. Start taking practice tests. The timing, working your way through the actual LSAT exam is difficult, especially from the start. It is a difficult standardized test. You have to learn that timing. You have to learn that structure, and that's only going to come through practice. I've seen stats where 200 hours of preparation time is when you really start seeing your maximum score possible, or starting to get in that score range. And I've even seen some suggestions up towards 300 hours of really solid preparation time. Lots of resources to check out for LSAT prep books. You can go to the library, you can go to Amazon, you can go to your favorite bookstore. They're going to have LSAT prep guides. Get it from a major testing company. They're all pretty similar. But remember, my biggest piece of advice, prepare in advance for that LSAT. Don't let the date sneak up and then you under-prepare and you don't get the score you're possible of getting. Another thing that I would think about is doing a lot of research, and especially utilizing different online forums like toplawschools.com, looking at different law school type forums, trying to cast your net as wide as possible and doing a lot of research, especially when you talk about the quality of certain programs. You want to hear from graduates what they're saying in terms of job placement numbers and the overall quality of the program. Are they actually utilizing their JD degree, or are they just working in any old job? Those types of stats are very important to see. And 2, specifically think before you actually start applying for law school, what specific area of law do you want to focus in? And there are a lot of different ranking lists out there. Sources like U.S. News, for example, compiles a lot of different law school rankings. But I've had students before come to me and they just are looking at a general top 10 or top 25 list of law schools, and they say, okay, I want to go to that one, or that one. And I always tell them, think about what specific area of law you want to specialize in. So, for example, I had a student come to me and say that they wanted to specialize in environmental law. And we started looking at specific environmental law programs that were highly ranked. And a lot of these schools were not on the general ranking list for the top 25 programs in the country. So you really have to be as specific as possible. Another thing to take into consideration, geographical area. Where do you ultimately want to practice law? It's probably a good idea, especially if you're not going to a very top law school, like in the top 10, let's say, that you think about where you want to geographically practice, attend law school in that basic region, because that law school is going to have the most networking, the most contacts in that specific geographical region. Another thing that you have to consider from a networking perspective. So all of these things you need to be thinking about now before you actually start applying. Another thing, and this goes without saying, but keep your grades up throughout your undergraduate degree. Keep that GPA up. It's an easy barometer for law schools to look for. Challenge yourself. Take challenging legal-related classes, legal philosophy, psychology and law, criminal law, constitutional law type classes that are offered. Try to cover a lot of those topics again to make sure this type of study is for you before you make that time and monetary commitment to law school. So again, think about these things beforehand. My last piece of advice, and like I mentioned a little bit earlier, you should plan to complete at least 2 legal internships throughout your undergraduate career to make sure working in the real legal world is for you, to make sure it's something you really want to do. Do that screening beforehand, before you actually get into law school. I've had some students complete legal internships that were dead set on being an attorney, and they hated it. They didn't like it at all, and they said, this is not for me. And I said, well, it's good that you found that out now, as opposed to just jumping into law school and finding out it's not for you after 3 years and $100,000+, whatever it ends up costing in the end. So make sure you do that screening. And it also really looks good, should you actually choose to go to law school, on your law school resume, your CV, having had those direct legal internships. And also when you think about letters of recommendation, having an attorney or a judge write one for you, that certainly looks good as well. So hopefully those tips helped, and just thinking about some of that information that I covered. Again, don't just make a rash decision, and just because your friends are doing it or just because someone says to do it or you think it sounds cool, this is a big time monetary commitment that you really have to think strategically about if it's for you. So hopefully this helped, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.